Right, so I thought I'd do a little video on us cleaning up the headlights on our Rover 45W Reg, our blue one. Hopefully you can see the difference on this side here. We've completely cleaned them up, and here on the driver's side they're still very much discoloured before they've done. And I thought I'd just show you the process we use. Now what we found is, although you can mask up the bumper, the easiest thing to do is to take the bumper off, and we have got videos where we've took the bumpers off on our cars, but it's not too bad to do to get the sort of effect you want and to get them really clean and done. You can see how this is very much yellowy, and it almost looks like there's sort of a film over them, so they're well worth cleaning up. And in the past we have done it just using a compounder, doing it by hand, and you can get them a lot better, but to get them really nice and clear like this, you do need to do it more this way, which I'm going to show you how we do it. Right, so if I bring you over to our little workbench, we've got a battery drill that we use, and then we've got some different attachments. We've got two attachments that go into the drill, two different sizes, just that's the way we find it easier to do. We start off by sanding them, wet sanding them. That's why we've got some soapy water here in an old spray bottle. We start off with two different grades, unless they're really bad, they're pretty fine grades, and then we put on a little polishing pad onto the bigger wheel, and we use a really sort of harsh T-cut first of all, and then once we've done that we then move on to the Auto Salvo because that's thinner, and then eventually we use just a normal polish. And once we've done that we then use a headlight protector. It is one of those things that we find you can't actually protect them forever. Eventually they will tarnish again, and you probably have to do this. It doesn't seem to wear the headlights away too much, but you normally get a good couple of years unless you're parking it right in the sun. So I'll just take you through the process of how we did it, and hopefully that one will end up as good as the other side. Right, so as you might have seen in that earlier video, what we do is put a dust sheet over the bonnet, because it tends to sort of fly and flick everywhere and it'll take forever to clean it all off. So that's what we do. I'm just going to wet them with a bit of soapy water. That'll help to clean off anything as well whilst you're doing the first sort of light wet sand over the light. So once we've wet sanded them, it's then just a case of going over with them. That's the harsher grip we've got there in the drill, but as I said, if you can roughly see, that's a job chart, it's still a pretty fine grade. And then all we're doing is going over them backwards and forwards like that, and then I normally come across like, and then back across like that, so they look almost like you've given them a light sort of white dusting over them, and then you sort of move down to the next grade. So I'm going to get on with that now. Right, so hopefully you could see I was going over that in multiple directions, and a good few times we went over it, and you can see there's just like a wet residue there. And what I'd normally do is give those a little spray, because what you don't want is this sort of drying and going hard. So I'll give that a little spray just to wash that off and keep it damp, and then what we do is move on to doing this light and that light, and then I'll come back to you then. Right, so that's the first going over with the sandpaper, sort of wet and drying it, and hopefully you can see there's sort of a cloud in there, and what I'll try and do is go over it really until you can see the whole amount that's clouded over. And that's one of the reasons we use that really little disc, so you can sort of really get into those bits there, because it's very easy to miss those, and sometimes it's not till a day later when it settles down you can sometimes see, or you'll find after sort of 6 months it'll start to come back in those corners. So we find it's really useful getting into all those corners. So again, what I normally do is spray it over with some of our soapy water and give it a wipe off, so that you're not getting any of the grit and dirt in each time for each sand. And yeah, you can sort of see they've now got this sort of mistiness. You can actually see the little bit there and a little bit there where the sanding has not got quite done, so I'm going to go back and do those little bits, and that's why it's worth wiping them over, letting them dry and seeing what bits you need to do. And they're talking about how we've took the bumper off, and what we always try and do is fit things in with other jobs. We've actually had to take this bumper off to do something else, so while it's off we can do the lights. It's easier to do it with the bumper off, as I said, but we've not literally had to take all the bumper off just to do these lights. So I'm going to try and do those little bits that have been missed, and then we'll move on to doing the next even finer grade of paper. Right, so we're now ready to put the next grade of sandpaper on, and we're using the slightly bigger bit this time, as that's sort of easy with the finer paper. Now we've got right into all those little bits with the slightly harsher grade of wet and dry. Right, so we're now ready to start that second grade, and as you can see now it's dried and it's pretty even, the white cloudiness, which the first time you do it is quite worrying because you kind of think you've damaged the headlight, but now you'll slowly see it come back clearer and clearer as we get on with it. First, before, I'm just going to wet them down, and that's the other thing that sort of gives you confidence. As you wet them down, they clear off and show you how they will start to look as well. And then it's a case as before, so just going over them backwards and forwards, side to side, and getting a good sanding over all the three parts of the light. Right, so we've now gone all over it with the finer grade, and as you can see it's already starting to look a little bit clearer, but as you're sanding you will see like a sort of a white residue coming off, and that is that sort of film that's built up being rubbed off, and the very sort of top layer of the light to get back that cloudiness to remove it. Again, what we normally do is give them a good spray of our soapy water, and then give them a little wipe off. Again, that's just letting you check that you've got everything sanded, but also getting away any of the dirt and the grit that's coming off of the wet and dry sandpaper. What we do, that I showed you, this was we buy the sand or wet and dry paper in big bags, and we also buy that separately. You can buy kits to do headlights, which we've done, but if you've got a lot to do or you're doing it regular, it can work out quite expensive. And even if you've only got one car, when you buy that kit, more or less there's nothing left from the kit once you've done one set of headlights, whereas if you buy it's sort of in more bulk online and all the bits separately, you've got it to do lots of other little jobs and buffing jobs as well, so we find that works better to do. So what we're now going to do is start our first polishing with our sort of compound polish or T-cut. We use one in a pot that's sort of like a solid paste almost, because we find that lasts a lot longer than the squeezy tubes. I mean, as you can see, this is quite an old tub we've had a long time. It just seems to almost never end, but we are getting to the bottom finally now. Right, so we've now got the little polishing pad on, and we've got our compound polish on, not too much, but enough to do the job. And then what we do is spray the lights over with a little bit of soapy water, keeping them wet all the time, not to really dilute the compound polish, but just to make sure it keeps flowing and doesn't dig in or really sort of compound too hard. It's one of those sort of things with the sanding and the polishing, you sort of get a feel for it, and the more you do it, the more you sort of get happy with the way you're doing it, and you'll sort of keep a lookout on it getting better. And it's just a case of going over it like we did before, up and down, side to side, diagonally, until it starts to look better without doing it too much. Right, so that's our cutting compound done, as you've seen, and as always we're just going to wash it off with a bit of soapy water, and again that gives you a little look at how things are going, and once again they should be starting to look a lot clearer. And what we're now going to do is use the Auto Salvo as like an even finer compound. We find that does bring them up quite well, so we're going to do that now. Right, so once again a little bit of the Auto Salvo polish. We'll get the lights nice and wet, and then do a similar process. Right, so that's the Auto Salvo done, and once again we'll give it a little wetting off with the soapy water, and then a wipe off, and hopefully now we're starting to see they are clearing off quite nicely. I'm getting a much clearer look. It's a job to fully show because of the lighting that you can certainly see it's a lot better. The last stage is to just do it with some normal polish. Right, so we're just using a spray and shine, but any polish would do for this final stage. It's really just give it one last little bit, and we're leaving what's left of the compounds on the little sponge that's on our drill as well, so it's kind of like a really fine polished compound before we put the protective coating on. Right, so that's our final polishing done, and then a nice new polishing cloth just to get that polish off. And then what we do is let that dry a little bit and then put on the final coating. So I'm just going to finish polishing that off, and then you'll be ready for the finished coating. Right, so now that's dried off, we can put the final wax coat on, which is this spray, which is supposed to protect it a little bit longer from UV. But already you can see it's even looking better where it's dried off as well, so I'm going to put that on now. Right, so now that's dried, all it needs is a little bit of a polishing or buffing off. Right, so that's both headlights done and protected. Hopefully that video has been of use to you. You can see now both are looking identical now, rather than one done and one not. So yeah, we find even with the protection, eventually they do start to tarnish again. It is something you have to do. So as I said earlier, it's well worth having that equipment handy to do, and it will let you do other little buffing off jobs as well. Some people say lacquer them to protect, and we have tried that, and actually it does look quite good when you first do it, but we found they still tend to cloud over eventually. So we found putting the sort of wax protective polish works better. And what we've also found is with the lacquer, when you come to re-wet sand, you've got to sand off the lacquer and any sort of contaminants that have got in, especially if the lacquer does start to peel away as well. So we find this works far better. So as I say, hopefully that's been of use to you, and showed you the sort of process we take to bring the headlights up. As I said, you can do it removing the you can do it without removing the bumper. It's just a little bit more fiddly because you've got to mask it all. There's a risk of damaging the bumper, and also there is part of the lights that you just can't get to while that bumper's on. So if you are doing another job and you've got to take the bumper off, then it's certainly worth doing. But I would say it's even worth taking the bumper off just to do this job. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to check out our other videos. We've got Instagram and Twitter as well.